Sensation and perception. All right. When we talk about sensation and perception, we talk about these two concepts. If people can see. You turning it off? I don't know. You taking a poll? Usually you can. Yes. I think you're smart enough to figure that out. Sensation and perception. Perception. Sensation literally means sensation is the senses your stimulus picks up. 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 Kayla, can you open those blinds so people can at least get some light? Thanks. The senses your stimulus picks up. Perception is how you process. You can't reach it. Perception is how you process based on your memory. Perception is how you process based on your memory. Thank you. Perception is how you process based on your memory. Sensation is the stimulus. Perception is how you process. Okay? Sensation is the stimulus. Perception is how you process. How you process. Sort of, kind of, yeah. Let's just say, for instance, how many of you, let's just say we all are we're outside and we're doing some gardening. We're all going to decide we're going to plant a garden together. We're all out there working, and a snake rolls by, crawls by, rolls by, comes by. What's your response? What are we saying? Scream. Run. What'd you say? Poison, not poisonous, he can say. Okay, so some people are like sitting there thinking, oh, now, sensation, we all see a 7-centimeter snake. That's what we saw. Perception, oh my God, it was this huge snake outside in the garden. See the difference? Sensation, we saw a 7-centimeter snake. Perception, this huge snake came out while we was gardening. Woo! That's their perception. Sensation, they caught a fish. Perception, they caught a fish. Okay? The sensation is literally what you saw. Is literally whatever the senses the stimulus picks up. So if I see it, I see it. I hear it, I hear it. Perception is how I process it. Perfect example, somebody talking to you. You have that one person that talks and you're like, she is always yelling. Every time she talks, she yells. That's your perception. Her perception is she might not be loud enough. Okay? And you're literally like, why is she so always screaming? That's her perception. Does that make sense? I'll use Mr. Palmer and myself for examples. He don't care. He always going to be my example. Me and Mr. Palmer are kind of like flat affect people. So if you come and tell us something, we're like, oh, that's messed up. That's just who we are. Our perceptions, we gave you a lot from that. We said, oh, that was a lot for us. Miss Alves is going to be like, oh my God, did it happen to you? Oh my. And we're like, she had to put all of that in there. It was not necessary. Her perception is she really cared. Our perception is we cared too. We said, oh. Okay? And we might even sit and talk about it, and I'll be like, woo, Jason, that took a lot out of me. I really cared. He's like, what did you say? I was like, I said, oh, like, dang, that was messed up. And he'd be like, oh, dang, yeah. And that's our perception. We gave a lot. Sensation, we both heard the same thing. Our perception is how we respond differently. Does that make sense? A person says something to you. One person can talk. Everybody heard it. Perception is how you process what was said. I always tell people common sense isn't common. It's personal. Okay? You might sit and say that's common sense. And somebody else says that makes no sense. Okay, that's their perception, not their sensation. Your stimulus picks up. Um, then say perception is how you understand the stimulus. Is that better? Okay. All right. Now, in regards to your senses, we're first going to talk about an overview of your senses. Then we're going to get down to each specific sense. Absolute threshold. I'm going to tell you, read the definition here. Then I'm going to translate the definition to where you might actually understand it. Okay. Definition here: weakest amount of a stimulus that can be distinguished from no stimulus at all. Who understands that? No. Bless you. You got it, Emmy? You're in a whole other chapter, Amy. Thank you for watching it. Cause hold that for 2 more chapters, because people are gonna be really lost when that chapter comes. This one is kind of. Let's go back to Amy's idea of a bell. The absolute threshold literally means it's the smallest unit you need to detect a stimulus is present. The smallest unit you need to detect a stimulus is present. The smallest unit you need to detect a stimulus is present. The smallest unit you need to detect a stimulus is present. Okay, close your eyes. The minute that you hear the music, raise your hand. Close your eyes. The minute you hear the music, you're going to raise your hand. I didn't even play the music yet. Y'all just raising your hand. Currently, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Some people are like, let me see if anybody else's hands are raised. All right, close your eyes. The minute you hear the music, you're going to raise your hand. Okay, now open your eyes, and I want you to see it. Do it again. The minute you hear now, I want you to watch around and watch how this works. The minute you hear the music, raise your hand. See how it all changed? Those are your absolute threshold. It's the smallest unit you need to detect something occurred. That's your absolute threshold of sound. You have an absolute threshold of taste. You have an absolute threshold of pain. You have an absolute threshold of seeing. All of your senses have an absolute threshold. Does that make sense? Say it one more time. That goes under there. Absolute threshold. The smallest unit you need to detect something has occurred. All of your 5 senses detects it. Now, here's another riddle. I'm going to read it, then we're going to talk about what it means. Difference threshold. Technical term, minimum difference in magnitude of two stimuli required to tell them apart. Make sense? No? All it means is there has to be a change of at least 50% in your absolute threshold for you to notice a difference. There has to be a change of at least 50% of your absolute threshold for you to notice a difference. There has to be a change of at least 50% of your absolute threshold for you to notice a difference. There has to be at least a 50% change in your absolute threshold for you to notice a difference. Okay, so what this means is I have to change at least 50% of your absolute threshold for you to notice any change has occurred. So if the music was really loud, for you to notice a decrease, I have to change it at least 50% of your absolute threshold for you to notice the volume was lowered. Does that make sense? You've ever made Kool-Aid, lemonade, iced tea, and you put sugar in it. Okay? Somebody tasted and said it's not sweet enough. You then tasted it and put some more sugar in it. You tasted it again and you said that's enough. You've reached 50% of your absolute threshold, but when you gave it to somebody else, they told you it's still not sweet enough. You still have not reached 50% of their absolute threshold for them to detect a change has occurred. Does that make sense? Grandma, you watch TV with grandma. Her absolute threshold for hearing might be a little high. So she's got the TV literally on 5,000. And she says, ooh, turn that up a little bit more. And you're thinking, oh my goodness. You have to reach 50% of her absolute threshold for her to notice you've even turned it up some more. You've got to go by her absolute threshold because yours is totally different. You should know that now. It's gonna probably, for some reason, that'll click to you. Like you won't even have to write it out. You just know. I don't know why. It's just something you'll remember. Know that law and you'll remember that. Everybody got it? Understand everybody's threshold is different, which means if you're in a household and somebody says turn up the heat, you've got to reach 50% of their absolute threshold for them to realize the heat was increased. If not, they still will be cold. Okay? Now, in regards to difference threshold, we call it by another name. It's also called just noticeable difference. Difference threshold, just noticeable difference. Same definition, same concept. Our standard of which we came up with this is called Weber's Law. Weber's Law is the standard in which we came up with just different noticeable difference and difference threshold. When I say standard, it's like the theory of evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution. There's a theory, there's a standard. They came up with whatever from that standard. So Weber's Law is like our law, and we've come up with this concept from the law. Does that make sense? Yes? No? It's always 50%. Weber literally said 50% is where people can make changes. We took Weber's Law and then said, okay, now let's apply it to making differences. From Weber's Law, we said 50%, so it makes sense to say 50% of what makes the difference. Right. Okay. Signal detection theory. Signal detection theory is a test. It's literally, can you pick up a signal in your senses through chaos? That's all it is. Can you pick up a signal through your senses through chaos? Can you pick up a senses? Can you pick up a signal through your senses in chaos? It's literally giving you, where's Waldo? A bunch of chaos, and I want you to find Waldo. If I put a bunch of noise and I want you to hear the beep, there's a bunch of, the minute you hear the beep, that's a signal detection theory. We just want to notify, can you pick up a signal during other chaos? Does that make sense? Yes? All right, let's keep going. Keep it moving. Sensory adaptation. All of your senses adapt over time. Okay? They adapt in two ways. Either they become sensitization or desensitization. Sensitization means they become overstimulated or oversensitive to a stimulus. Sensitization means they become oversensitive to a stimulus. They become oversensitive to a stimulus. Sensitization, your senses become oversensitive to a stimulus. Give me an example that you have oversensitivity to a stimulus. Why would you become oversensitive by it? But there has to be a cause. What makes it happen? Okay, allergy season. You become sensitization. Smell becomes something you're oversensitive to. Give me another example of sensitization. What do you, screaming baby. Become a mother. And for some reason, I think it's the most fascinating thing in the world that in a room full of kids, if I call my mom at the age of 40 and I say ma, she can know it was me who called her. Everybody can be like, mama, 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 mama. And the minute I say ma, she's like, my child just called me. Don't know how she do. It's amazing. Sensitization. Does that make sense? Oversensitive to something, a stimulus. If we go back to Cindy's idea of a smell of perfume, if you have a loved one and they wear that smell, you now become sensitization. You become oversensitive to that smell of that cologne if it ever comes into your presence. Does that make sense? Desensitization, you have now a less sensitive response to a stimulus. Desensitization, you have a less sensitive response to a stimulus. You no longer respond to that stimulus. Give me an example when this might occur. Okay, immune to medication. What's another one? There you go. You don't smell it. You desensitize to the smell. If you're a sanitation engineer, garbage man, you no longer smell the same way. Does that make sense? Now, before desensitization must occur, you have to have what's called adaptation. You adapt to the stimulus. Adaptation, you adapt to the stimulus. Adaptation, you adapt to the stimulus. All of you have done this, and the best example I can use, everybody goes to the bathroom, hopefully at least once a day. Now you're in there. You're in there for a while. When you first have your moment in the bathroom, what does it smell like? Roses? Yeah, that's what everybody claims. Clorox. What does it really smell like? Smell like a bit dead apple, yeah. Dead apple, rotten eggs. You know it smells really, really bad. Now you've been in there about 10 minutes. Now what does it smell like? You're sitting there thinking like, oh, this isn't that bad. God, it doesn't smell as bad as I thought I did. Somebody walks by outside the room and they say, oh my God, have you died inside? And you're like, it is not that bad. Because you now have created adaptation. You've adapted to the smell. Now, when you walk out the bathroom and walk back in, you be like, oh my God, I was really messed up. Because adaptation means you still can respond to it. Desensitization, you no longer respond to it. Do you see the difference? Put a watch on. When you first put a watch on, you kind of start moving it until eventually you adapt to it. How many of you ever had your cell phone and you said, I wonder where my cell phone is? Where did I put my cell phone? Dang it. Let me call my mom and see if she's seen my cell phone. My cell phone. Put your glasses. I wonder what I did with them glasses. You tearing up the house. Where's those glasses? Have you seen my glasses? They like, yep. I sure have. Where are they? On top of your head. You've adapted to the sense. You could tell when a person just got married or just got engaged. They constantly do this because it's something new on their finger. You can also tell a person that's been married forever, they don't even feel it any longer. It's become a part of them. They've adapted to it. They're now desensitized to the feeling. Does that make sense? All your senses go through this. Okay? When we first turned off the lights, you are now all adapted to the light now. Make sense? If I flick that light on really quickly right now, all of you, some of you might start to do like this, because now you got to adapt to the light again. Okay? Now, let's talk about the eyes, vision. First thing you need to know, the eyes pick up everything through light. 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 Now let's actually talk about the light, the eye. First thing is the cornea. The cornea is the protective coat. It's the transparent protective coat on the outer part of the eye. The cornea, the transparent protective coat on the outer part of the eye. The cornea. We then have the iris. It's the color of the eye. If you got blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, black eyes, that is your iris. It is actually a muscle. It contracts to allow less or more light into the eye. The iris is the color part of your eye. It is a muscle that contracts to allow less or more light into the eye. Contracts to allow less or more light into the eye. The iris is the color part of the eye. It's a muscle. And it contracts to allow more or less light. You then have the pupil. It's the black dot inside the eye. It dilates or widens to allow light to come in. The pupil, black part of the eye, it widens and dilates to allow less or more light. To allow less or more light. It also responds to emotions. Your pupil responds to emotions. You can actually tell if a person is truly being honest with you by watching their pupil. You can tell if a person is really angry with you by watching their pupil. A person cannot technically lie because the pupil will tell the truth. Dilates will kind of like bring it in, and then the widens will actually open it. If they say your pupil, dilating is kind of just like where it changes its format. Like you'll actually see it sometimes moving like this, sometimes it'll move like that, sometimes it'll move in, and it depending on how you feel, it'll change. It needs you more, it really what it's saying at that point, you need more light. So remember, the way you can only way you can see is through light. That's just how you can see. So at night, evidently because there's less it's darker, it's less light out, your pupils actually open to probably try to get, can I get some more light so we can see whatever we're trying to see. Open as far as you can so we can see. If we cannot see, we're going to keep moving until we can see more and more light, because the only way we can see is through light. The better I can see. And if you've ever watched, who's ever been angry? I mean, really angry to where just like stuff just starts getting small. The pupils are actually closing in. It's letting less and less light, so you feel that dark. It's just almost something like you feel, some people black out because the pupils got so small no light came through. Called it blacking out. We blacked out. Pupil blocked out. Pupil literally dilated to where it said no light. And people literally go like, I was so angry I couldn't see nothing. You couldn't see anything because pupils literally would like, okay, we're angry, shrink it up, no light. Light makes you happy. So the pupils like, let less light in. The darker it is, the angrier you're going to get. Okay? Those little dilate, they're trying to make the pupil move to see how much light you're letting in. Because depending on how much light you let in, can you see? If you can't see, then we know we got to go get some other stuff for you. We might need some help. Which is called the lens. Which is why you get lenses in your glasses, so that you can focus on an object. still containing to light. So your lenses actually change focus. Your lenses get thick, they get thin. They get thick, they get thin, just so they can focus in on an object. This is why people wear glasses, and a part of the glasses is called a lens, because you are now replacing the lens that is not working in the eye, because it is not either creating a thickness or thinning so you can actually see an object. Okay? The eye is an amazing part of the body, and you don't even realize all it's doing. But technically, all it has taken in right now is light. The brain doesn't understand any of it. Okay? So what it then takes all of this information and it takes it into what we call the retina. Inside of the eye, we have the back part, which is called the retina. Inside of the retina, you have what is called the fovea. It is the center of the retina. Fovea is the center of the retina. Inside the retina, you also have rods and cones. Rods allow light, cones allow color. Okay? In the back of the eye is where you then will have and find your optic nerve. I probably would. Optic nerve is in the back. So all of this light filtered in, the retina starts to process, sends it to the optic nerve. The optic nerve then sends the light message to the thalamus. The thalamus performs what is called transduction, which is when it changes the energy so the brain can use it. Okay? All this light came into the retina starts to process, sends the light image to the optic nerve then sends the light image to the thalamus. The thalamus performs transduction. It switches the energy around from light into an actual message. The brain then says, you just saw a car. I don't know. I'm still waiting for my book to arrive. Optic nerve. So remember, the brain doesn't understand any of this. You saw something, the brain has no idea. Remember we talked about the thalamus in chapter 2? We called it the message switching system. It then creates the message part. The switching part is called transduction. Transduction is where it switches the stuff so the brain can recognize what we actually used. When the brain then wants to send a signal back, it goes back through the thalamus, transduction occurs, it then switches it back to the eye can understand. Happens in millimilla of a second. Exactly. You got it. Now, let's go from there. That's the sensation. The perception is how we process what the brain just recognized. So let's just say we take a picture of your family. All you saw was light. It then went into the retina. Optic nerve switched into what the light can recognize, send it up to the thalamus. The thalamus did transduction. You recognize it as people you know. You said, oh my God, that's my husband. Compared to if it's not your husband, you recognize oh, that's somebody in the picture. Sensation, perception. No light messages are going to the brain. So because the brain can't recognize the light that's coming in, she can't see anything. So what she might see is shadows and stuff, but to her it means nothing because the eye is working here, it's picking up light, but there's no message switching to where it can't recognize what it sees, so therefore she won't see anything. That's a horrible thing to happen. That's good. It's really good. That's her perception. Yeah, that's a good perception. Mhm. Because what she was doing, if you look at, we talked about that. This is how this would be her eye, right in here. See how big the retina? The retina is almost the whole back part of the eye. This is the blind spot. So depending on where her tear is, she can't see certain things at that point. So her vision became just here because the blind side was torn. So sometimes people have damage in this area to where when you drive, you always have to do this because you can't see in that peripheral part because you have a blind spot. Okay? And that's your eye. We talked about the rods. Let's talk a little bit more about these rods and cones. How many of you ever tried to get dressed in the dark? Okay? The rods pick up light. Your cones pick up color. The rods only work with light out. So if there's no light, although you can see color, you can't filter what color it is because there's no light. All right? And we talk about the way that these rods and cones work. The rods actually adapt up to 45 minutes. It takes your eyes 45 minutes to adapt to light. It only takes your cones 10 minutes to adapt. That's a problem. You can see color within 10 minutes, but it takes 45 minutes for the rods to recognize any light. Without light, there is no color. To adapt to light. 45 minutes for your rods to adapt to light, 10 minutes for your cones. So if we turn the lights off, you can see color. You usually probably see dark, brown. You might never see brown. You see dark, gray, and maybe some white. Without rods, you can't identify the actual color because we've taken away all your light. For real, which one part you want me to repeat? All of that. Cones, color, 10 minutes. Rods, 45 minutes. Biggest thing you want to know, you can see color within 10 minutes, but you can't decide what color it is because 45 minutes, all light is gone. Hmm. Yeah, that is. It's about rods and cones. Exactly what it is. It's the same thing, and that's your adaptation. Okay. This is what I just want you to know the definition of the dimensions of color. You need to know hue, value, and saturation. Know the definition. Know the definition of hue, value, and saturation. Know your definition. Know your definition. The color wheel, we're going to start talking about how we see color. So we're going to break it from the color wheel. We look at color wheel as warm and cool colors. It's really based on perception. But when we go into the different parts, we talk about, everybody stare at the black dot for a minute. Just keep staring at the black dot. Even if you want to look away, stare at the black dot. What do you see? Did you see the flag? It's your after image. What it actually happens, the after image is literally the sensation is so great because of your prolonged look that the cones leave you a residue so that you won't forget the image in case you need it. It'll give it to you for a couple of seconds. It's called an after image. It's kind of like because you stare so long, the brain thinks you need this for a minute. So then all of a sudden you give us after image, which is literally the residue that the eye leaves after persistent exposure. It's the residue the eye leaves after persistent exposure. The residue the eye needs after persistent exposure. Exposure. Now, in regards to color, we've got two different theories of why we or how we see color. It's called the triaematic theory and the opponent process theory. The triaematic theory, what does tri mean? Three. The triaematic theory literally says our eye only picks up three colors, red, green, or blue. The triaematic theory says our eye picks up three colors, red, green, and blue. The theory then says it changes colors by mixing the three colors, either by pairing it or all together, or exposing it to more light. The way we change colors, we either mix the three colors together, either by pair or all three, or we change the amount of light. One more time. We mix the colors together by either pairing them or all three, or we change the amount of light. Together or all three, or changing the amount of light. So everybody looks at this cover. What color is it? Do we all agree it's pink? But you got to make sure everybody agrees. Do we see the color pink? No. So what has we actually probably done here to see this color? We probably did what we do with red. Probably put less color in it, less light in it. You added more and more light, and you're like, oh, that's pink. This is why when people say, come to my wedding and wear pink, when you turn around, what will you see? 50 Shades of Pink. The reason why, depending on how much light they let in, they literally saw this color differently. Some people say it's not. Some people just say it's pink. They don't see a different shade. It's just pink. We've been taught fuchsia, magenta, hot pink. What's the difference between magenta and hot pink? Is it? I don't know. I know at the paint store it's a difference. But when I keep looking at it, I swear they're the exact same color. Take some nail polish and put it like this. And one of them is called candy apple red. And this is called fire engine red. And you put them together and you're like, same color. But as far as the color wheel is concerned, it is different. One of them has a little bit more light than the other. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Opponent process theory a little bit different. Now, these are theories of how we see color. It means these two people prove this. You now have to study it. You could pick which one you like. They both kind of go together. Opponent process theory literally says, we take colors, we pair them together by them being the opposite. We take colors, pair them together if they are the opposite. We take color, pair them together if they are the opposite. So we pair black and white together to make gray. We pair red and green together to make purple? I don't know. We only pair opposite colors together. We pair them together if they are the opposite. Opponent process theory. We create opponents. Again, these are literally theories of how we see color. One is both been proven. You got to decide which one you like the best. But yet, that's the difference. Opponent process theory and trichromatic theory. Now, in regards to color blindness, we have 3 different types of color blindness. Let's just first see what's the first letter number, second number. All right, so you guys all passed. These are the 3 different types. So we have some people who have normal color vision, we have totally colorblind, and then we have partially colorblind. Some people can't see dark colors, some people can't see light colors. Okay, so they will give you a simple colorblind test to see if you have normal, totally colorblind, or partially colorblind. Okay? Which kind of gives you tri. Remember what they're saying, we see 3 colors. Mono, you only see 1 color. Di, you only have 2 colors in regards to either light or dark or something in that color spectrum. All right, visual perception. Remember in chapter 1, we learned this person called Gestalt theory. Do you remember Gestalt? What was his concept? He had a little slogan. What was his slogan? What was Gestalt? He said something about a hole. There we go. What did he say? The whole is bigger than its parts. So in that aspect, we have the visual perception. The visual perception literally says we see things greater as a whole based on different concepts. We see things as a whole based on different concepts. We see things as a whole based on different concepts. For instance, the experiment here, what do you see in the first A slide? A vase. What else do you see? Two faces. Okay. The idea is you see it based on these different concepts. The first one is proximity. We literally vision things based on how close they are to each other. We literally visualize things based on how close they are to each other. Proximity. We visualize things based on how close they are to each other. Let's give an example. We walk down a street and there's a dog on every porch. 20 houses, dog on every porch. What did you see? Dog on every porch. Do we all agree? Now, all of those dogs came into the middle of the street. Now, what do you see on this block? What are you going to call them? A pack of dogs. Why are they now a pack of dogs? Based on their proximity. When they were all on the porch, there was a dog on every porch. When they got together, because of their proximity, they became a pack of dogs. We base things based on how close they are to each other. Their proximity. We walk into a mall. In the parking lot, we've counted 20 teenagers. They've just all walked into the mall at different times. Now, we walk outside the mall. All 20 teenagers are standing at one car. What's the difference? How are we describing? We might say it was a gang of teenagers. It was the same 20 that you saw walk in, but now because of their proximity, they became a gang. Does that make sense? All right. Similarities. We group things based on their similarity. We group things based on their similarity. Similarity of objects or people. We group things based on their similarity. This is how stereotypes start. Through similarity. Let me think. Okay. If I have slanted eyes, olive color skin, jet black hair, what am I? I'm Asian. You just grouped me based on my similarity. Technically, does that make me Asian? No. Because guess what? I got slanted eyes. Somebody say I got olive color skin and I got black hair, but you just grouped me just by my description based on the similarity. Does that make sense? Everybody follow? You base things based on the similarity. Tomatoes, fruit or vegetable? I don't know. I still haven't understood the whole plot behind this fight. Is it a fruit? Okay, but it's located where? In the vegetable section. It's in fruits and vegetables, but it's not near the apples. It's near the lettuce. Why is it probably near the lettuce? Because technically we're going to group it because it's supposed to go in a what? A salad. More than likely you're not going to eat it like you eat an apple. Similarity. Does that make sense? All right. Continuity. Continuity literally means we do things to create continued patterns. We do things that create continued patterns. Another way of looking at continuity, we do things that make sense because of the pattern. We do things, we continue patterns that make sense. We do things based on patterns. How many of you brush your teeth before getting in the shower? One. How many brush your teeth in the shower? How many brush your teeth after the shower? Why do you brush your teeth that way? Why do you brush your... We always, for some reason, I've done this poll in 5 classes now, and most people, predominant people, brush their teeth after the shower. Why do you brush your teeth after the shower? Yes, what everybody keeps saying. Like, you're not going to feel clean if you brush them before the shower, because you got dirty in the shower. I brush mine after, too. I don't... Why do you do it? right before you leave the house. Why do you do it? Guess why you really do it? Probably because you were taught and you just continue in the pattern. You probably have a lot of your dishes, if you live by yourself, the same place that your mom put her dishes. You just continue in a pattern. You don't know why it's there. You just continue in a pattern. It's just what you do. Does that make sense? Okay, and you look at it like, this makes sense. I feel, if we take Zan's thing, I feel cleaner if I brush my teeth after the shower, because the shower just dirties me up so much that my teeth would be dirty all over again. That's the theory, but your thought was, it makes sense, so I just continue the pattern. Follow? All right, closure, huge one. Closure, we fill in gaps to make sense. We fill in gaps to make sense. Closure, we fill in gaps to make sense. We fill in gaps to make sense. It's honesty time. How many of you ever had a breakup? Okay, if you haven't, trust me, keep living. It's just going to happen whether y'all get back together or not. It's just life. Now, how many... If you broke it up with him, the person that you were with, you break up. How do you feel once the breakup has occurred? You chose to do it. I'm out. They break up with you. Hold on. I need to ask some questions. Why do you need to ask questions? You need to fill in the gaps to make sense. And we call it, I just need some closure. If he says, because I wanted to, somebody like, oh, no, that's not going to do it with me. I need more. Why? You got too many gaps. So when you choose to do something, it's closure. The emptiness is literally because you lack the closure. You need to fill in these gaps, and it makes sense. If you cannot make sense, you will process it over and over and over and over and over again. You'll even start to make up your own stuff. We do that often. This is probably what happened. This is what happened. And be careful, because your friends will give you closure. That's not real closure. Okay? It's just what we do. In that aspect of closure, we then have what is called common fate. We put things together if it's going that way. We put things together if it's going that way. It's kind of based on your idea of instinct. You put things together because it was going that way. His friends are cheating. He's always with his friends. He's probably doing it too. It just makes sense. It's common fate. It goes together. It fits. So now what you start doing, you start looking for those things that help you validate you putting it together. He didn't answer the phone call. He answered 5 minutes later than he usually answers. Oh, there it is. It's just what you do. Okay? Common fate. Everybody got it? Now you know why you do the things you do. Now, how we process all of this. So you've got this concept. Now we got to process. Top down, bottom up. Top down, bottom up. We're going to start with bottom up. Bottom up is when you literally describe what the stimulus sensed. Bottom up. You literally, accurately describe what the senses accurate. Oh. Bottom up. You accurately describe what the stimulus, what the sense, darn it. Thank you. What the stimulus sense. You accurately describe what the stimulus sense. In other words, what you see is what you describe. What you hear is what you describe. What you feel is what you describe. So let's go back to the garden. Sense. We're in the garden. What did we see? What did we see? 7 centimeter snake. That's bottom up. What we see is what we describe. Top down, you describe and process based on your emotions and your experience. Top down, you process based on your emotions and your experience. Pretty much. You process based on what you see and your experience and your emotions. Got it? Okay, there's usually a game that we try, but to time we can't. What the game is what it shows is it's literally the colors red, blue, black, green. Okay, red, blue, black, and green. Those are the colors. Red, blue, black, and green. They then change the color of the ink in regards to the word blue. So blue might be the word blue written in red. The word green written in brown. The word yellow written in green. It then tells you, say the color of the ink. Now you have to pay attention and say the color of the ink, not the color, read the color of the word. What it is bottom up says, say what you see. Top down, you process, if it's written blue, it should be blue. If it's written green, it should be green. Does that make sense? Got it? All right. Let's keep it moving. Keep going. Depth perception, mononuclear and binuclear. Mononuclear cues. This means these are things that only one eye are needed to perform. Things that only one eye are needed to perform. You only need one eye to notice these things. Binuclear cues. 2 eyes are needed to perform. 2 eyes are needed to perform. Binuclear cues, 2 eyes are needed to perform. The 2 different concepts that 2 eyes are needed are retinal disparity and convergence. Retinal disparity. Both retinas take a picture to create one image. Both retinas take a picture to create one image. Retinal disparity. Both retinas take a picture to create one image. Both retinas take a picture to create one image. Take your pen, pencil, whatever you're using about 1 inch from your nose. Close your right eye. Close your left eye. Close your right eye. Close your left eye. Close your right eye. Close your left eye. What did the pen do? It moved. Did the pen actually move? No. What occurred is the right retina and the left retina, left retina took a picture to create one image. So when you open up the eyes, you can look at the picture, the pen, and see one image. But when you close it, each one is taking its own picture. That's retinal disparity. Got it? Convergence. Take your pen again. Move it closer to your nose. Closer, 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 closer. What are your eyes doing? Coming inward. Convergence is when the eyes converge onto each other to identify closeness. Convergence, when the eyes converge onto each other to identify closeness. Identify closeness. Consistencies, know your definitions. Size, color, brightness, shape. Know your definition. Consistencies, know your definition. Yep. Yep, 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 yep. And then we're going to move to the ear. Let's move to the ear. We're done with the eye. We're moving to the ear. In regards to the ear, first you need to know, sound is identified by waves. Sound is identified by waves. The waves are literally done in two different parts, either the pitch, which is the frequency of the wave, or the loudness, which is the height of the wave. Sound is identified by a wave either through its frequency, which is the pitch, or the height of the wave, which is its loudness. Okay? Either through its pitch or its frequency or loudness, its height. If the wave is higher, it's louder. Frequency, if it moves a lot, the pitch changes. You have that. Literally, sound waves look like this. Low frequency, high frequency. This is going to be a lower sound. This is going to be a higher sound. Low, very quiet. High, louder. These are just waves. Okay? The ear actually picks up the differences. A lower voice. A deeper sound. If you got that person's got a really squeaky voice, they have a high frequency. Their waves are just kind of like. If I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. If I talk louder, I got my waves are coming. My voice is coming out with a louder wave. All right. Now let's break down the ear. The parts of the ear. The part you need to know that's not on this board, this slide, the outer part of the ear is called the pinna. The outer part of the ear is called the pinna. It is shaped like a funnel. The outer part of the ear is called a pinna, shaped like a funnel. It literally filters in the wave. It catches the wave and filters it into the ear. The pinna filters sound in, catches the wave. It filters the sound in through what is called the auditory canal. Pinna catches the sound, filters the wave into the auditory canal. Pinna catches the sound, filters into the auditory canal. It then bounces off the tympanic membrane, or what we would call the eardrum. It bounces off the eardrum, filters from the pinna, auditory canal, bounces off the eardrum. It then vibrates the three smallest bones in your body: the anvil, the hammer, and the stirrup. It vibrates the three smallest bones in your body: the anvil, the hammer, and the stirrup. If you got medical terminology or anatomy and physiology, you probably call it the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, but we're not going to call it that. We call it the anvil, the hammer, and the stirrup. After vibrating the three smallest bones in the body, it's then processed through the cochlea. After vibrating the three smallest bones in the body, it vibrates and processes through the cochlea. After processing through the cochlea, it's sent to the auditory nerve. And then what occurs in the auditory nerve? What's that process called by the thalamus? Transduction. Transduction then occurs. So let's go through sound. How do we hear? Sound is then first bounced off the, sent to the, bounced off the, vibrates the, processed in the, sent to the, so that what can be performed? Done with the ear. Please understand, with the ear, who uses Q-tips? All right. Q-tips are technically for the pinna only. Okay? It is never supposed to be inserted into the auditory canal. The reason why is because what's at the bottom of the auditory canal? The eardrum. It is a very thin tissue. If it is tapped, ruptured, it will tear. If it's torn, you then no longer have sound bouncing off of it. Technically, you are never supposed to put anything in your ear larger than your elbow. Sometimes no. Yes. Basically, you're not supposed to put anything in there. You're supposed to wash it out. You can wash it out, but don't stick anything in it. It can rupture from sound. If you ever go to, how many of you ever gone to a concert and when you finish the concert, you just feel like boom, boom, boom. It's just the eardrum is just literally for 2 hours. It just had decimals that it was just like, oh my gosh. How many of you had the ringing sound that you're kind of just like, oh my goodness, it's all this. Now, what you do want to know when it comes to deafness and hard of hearing, individuals that actually have a hearing aid, their cochlea still works. So the hearing aid actually amplifies sound so they can still hear. They just need to amplify the sound, which means they just need the waves to get louder. And that's what the hearing aid does. It creates higher waves. Those people that are deaf, their cochlea do not work. Therefore, they have to have what is called a cochlear implant. And a cochlear implant is actually placed on the outside of the head. It's drilled into the skull and it's filtered into the inner part of the ear so they can actually process sound. So hard of hearing, cochlea still works. Deafness, cochlea does not work. Okay. Inside of it, all in here. Oh, because it's like it's a thin layer of skin, so technically it can be spotted. The ear, nose, and throat people. It might be black spotted because it's like a flush color. So the ear, nose, and throat people detect all of that because you can actually find cancer in this part. It's not to the brain. The only part that connects to the brain is this. Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that. It's connected. What literally happens when this is messed up, it actually has a connection to where your balance is off. So the minute if I close your ears, it kind of gives you a problem with the balance. And because the sinuses drain usually through this way down, it drains from the nose passage. And really what it is the nose passage into the throat. So if you have draining, sometimes you'll keep coughing because it's draining inside. And once it starts to drain inside, it's clogging up the passage of the hearing part. So you can't hear as well, which creates the balance part, which creates you that feeling that you're like this, not to mention it's draining into the inner part of the throat. Okay? So that's your ear. We're done with the ear. Now we move to the nose. The olfactory defines the nose. The olfactory defines the nose. You have an olfactory nerve. The olfactory defines the nose. Understand olfactory. The olfactory is how we define the nose. It has nerve and what we call bulbs. So inside your nose you have an olfactory nerve and you have olfactory bulbs. It's how you detect smell. Now, the idea is that smell is really generated through odor. In America, we've learned that odor means something that stinks. But anything that generates an aroma is an odor. Food has an odor. Garbage has an odor. Perfume has an odor. Odor literally is how we smell. Okay? Now, the brain recognizes odor and actually generates emotions through the smell. Emotions and memory through smell. You can generate an emotion and a memory through the smell. If you listen to a certain playlist while you're studying, you need to listen to the same playlist while you take your test. If you drink caffeine while you study, you need to drink caffeine when you take your test. The memory in the brain actually responds to whatever stimulus is going on. It repeats. That's how it creates memory. So if you hear it again, it triggers memory. There are certain things that when you are in this class, you're going to remember. If you go home, you'll forget. The minute you walk back into this class, you'll remember it again. It's called state-dependent memory. You have to return back to the state that you acquired the memory to remember. Well, I always tell people, please don't study under intoxicated substances because you do have to repeat your intoxication to perform your best. Yeah. Just saying. So one other thing you need to know is the tongue. Understand the smell and the tongue work together. If you cannot smell it, you won't taste it. Okay? If you cannot smell it, you won't taste it. One part about the smell you need to know, men are attracted to menstrual cycle, women are attracted to urine and sweat. Mm-mm. Men are attracted to menstrual cycle, women are attracted to urine and sweat. Unconsciously, they release a hormone that you are attracted to. If you at the time of the month, just before when you start to ovulate, a woman releases a pheromone that is so high in regards to its intensity that a man becomes more attracted to her during that time. Unfortunately, we are like dogs in heat. So during your ovulation, you release a pheromone at high altitudes of smell. He can smell your pheromone. It is the time he is mostly attracted to you. It's the time he's going to touch you more. It's the time he's going to be around you more because he can actually smell your pheromones that you're releasing because you're technically in heat. He might be more attracted to the smell of sweat. No, he knows. He knows. Oh, he knows. Oh, can you tell if he's not attracted to you? Yeah. Oh, he can tell. Yeah. Thinking was he? That would be one time when it's just like if or you don't remember he has absolute threshold. So there are going to be times when he's never attracted to you because you have not reached his absolute threshold. He needs you to produce more pheromones for him to actually reach an attraction. Does that make sense? Yes. And unfortunately, because the sex industry found this out, they now bottle pheromones. It's the best smelling stuff, and I mean, you fall in love with yourself. It's $11. Victoria's Secret now has a couple of them in some of their perfumes. It literally says pheromone enhanced. Some colognes have it as well. Once you put it on, you intensify your own pheromone production to when people walk by you, they draw to you more because you're producing more pheromone. It's the best smelling. I am not gonna lie to you. I literally was in the bathroom like, God, I smell so good. Like, and it's just everybody's gonna smell different because it's your pheromone. So if you're in a relationship, you're going to produce a smell that he will recognize. That's her pheromone smell. So literally, she releases it in multitudes during her ovulation time because she's in heat. So it's the time where he just kind of like all of a sudden he like, babe, and you like, dang, why you all on me? And what he's trying to tell you is you releasing it and he's getting. Now, as a male, when they first come back from exercising, doing anything that created sweat, you are highly attracted to him. Go into the gym and watch how you literally are just like, it's just like alert for women because it's so much just sweat in there that you're just kind of like, oh my God, I can really tear some people up in this place. Okay, because you literally are responding to the pheromone. Don't ask why, it's just the way that you was created. The urine. I have not figured the urine out yet. When I found that out, I'm just like, urine. Like, when my boyfriend in the bathroom, I'm just not like, oh, I can't wait till he get out. I'm not feeling that. I'm more thinking like, oh my God, he need to. I don't know. It's just, they say it's the women literally pick up that smell and it intensifies attraction. Maybe it's a manly, I don't know. Technically. We have to smell it. That might be it. Why it's heightened. We got to be able to recognize that smell of urine. Hold it. All right, for the tongue, let's finish this really quick so you can get your tongue done. Me not done, but you get it. I didn't mean it like that. All right, so the tongue. Tongue only represents and recognizes certain taste. This is your tongue. On the tip of the tongue, you taste salty and what is called umami. This is literally considered fatty. So only on the tip of your tongue can you taste these two things. So for you to taste something that is salty, and I'm sorry, ooh, don't write that. Don't write salty. It's sweet on the tip of the tongue. So for you to taste something sweet, you have to only use the tip of your tongue to taste it. The tip of your tongue is the only place you taste sweet. The side of your tongue is where you taste salty. Your salty taste buds are only on the side of your tongue. You cannot taste salt unless it's on the side of your tongue. The back side is your sour. You can only taste from the back side of your tongue something sour. If you ever ate a lemon, Sour Patch Kid, bite into it, that's where you're going to taste it. The back is bitter. Ever take cough medicine? The minute it lays on the back of your residue, it's going to give you a bitter taste. Pinch your nose, none of your senses of taste pick up. Smell a donut, you could taste it, even if you don't eat it. Pinch your nose, you taste nothing. Some of y'all going to be trying to eat dinner like that. That's because the minute you went like this, you didn't let go of the residue. Any residue left on the tongue will be taste. So you have to wash it off with something you like. So take the medicine, wash it down with some Kool-Aid, you're good. It's got to be something that you like. To smell? Oh no, to pinch your nose, you won't taste nothing. Yes, on the tip. So say I wanted to taste some cake to see if it was really sweet, I've got to use the tip of my tongue to taste it. If I don't, I won't taste sweet. If I use the side, it won't taste sweet. I won't taste it. If I want to taste something salty and I go like, oh, that's not bad. Oh, that's not bad. The minute I put it in my mouth and it hits those sides, it's going to be the saltiest stuff I ever ate. Okay? You guys are ready to take your quiz. We'll come and finish the skin on Monday. And also bring the next chapter. I'll fix them, so don't print them now. I have to fix them before you print them. You can print them later today. On the computer. Sit. Nah, if you printed everything else, it's just gonna, you just have to mix them around. Your chapter 4 is consciousness, which is chapter 5. So if you're printing before you leave today, print chapter 5. It's just a number. Yeah, if you look in the book and find your slides, you're fine. It's just some people need the numbers. I don't think so. I'll look again, Cindy, but I don't think it does. You have to do a quiz and the